I saw a quote the other day. It was something that was attributed to George Carlin. Somebody had posted it up on Facebook, and I had responded to it. But the quote basically stated that religion has people convinced that there's an invisible man in the sky with a list of 10 things that they can't do, and that this invisible man sees everything that they do, and that if anybody breaks any of these 10 things, that he's going to send them to this fiery place of torment, but yet he still loves them and um, still needs their money. So I wanted to cover that, and if you want, in the comments section, just let me know, and I'll go through and I'll break down each one of his statements individually and go into it. But what he's doing is he's painting a picture of Christianity and Christians in general, and I say that because of the reference to God being love, and because of the reference to 10 specific items that they're not supposed to break. It's obviously a reference to Christianity. He just didn't want to sack up and call it out specifically, but that's fine. He hid it under the guise of a generic term and called it religion, which, by the way, uh, atheism is a religion, since it can't be proven or disproven. It's an ideological view that cannot be proven or disproven. It is by definition therefore a religion. So that includes those. But what he's doing is he's painting a picture of the fact that adherents to Christianity are somehow enslaved to a list of 10 rules in order to get something in return. And that is the worst kind of perversion, but it also shows the level of intellectual ignorance of the individual who's even making this statement, uh, because it only shows that he hasn't got the first clue what Christianity is even about. Uh, I have more respect for people of Islam or Buddhism or Hinduism who actually study Christianity and develop an apologetic argument against it than I do for an individual who gets his theology from the History Channel and forms a worldview based on that, and then refers to me as being a slave. The fact of the matter is everybody is a slave to something. If you are not a slave to an ideology, you are a slave to your own baser desires. And just to prove it, I would challenge anybody to try and keep those 10 commandments. They're found in Exodus 20 in the Bible. You can Google it, or I'll post it up if you need them. Try and keep those 10 commandments for 1 week, just 1 week. Try not to covet anything that your neighbor has. Try not to lie for either success or for affirmation from others. Try not to steal, no matter how big, no matter how small. Um, Pirating a video, anything like that is theft. Try not to steal. Try not to commit adultery, even in your heart to lust after your neighbor, uh, or your neighbor's wife or whatever. You know, is adultery. Try not to. If you think for 1 second that you are not a slave, then try and put down those desires for 1 week and not do them. You feel free to post up in the comments section if you were able to successfully complete it, and I'll show you which one you failed at. But the fact of the matter is everybody is a slave to something. If we saw a crack addict who, you know, did his crack, smoked his line, he has this addiction, and he is just drawn to it. Uh, this individual, nobody would look at him and say, well, he is obviously free and enlightened. He's the most free of us all. Nobody would look at that individual with that kind of eyes and make that kind of remark. The fact of the matter is you would look at that individual and you would say, he is a slave to that addiction. And you'd be right, because that's exactly what the Ten Commandments is about. The Ten Commandments is not a list that tells you you're not to smoke crack. That goes without saying. The Ten Commandments is a list to show you, it's a gauge that shows you where your character is, to show you that you couldn't stop smoking crack if you didn't want, or if you wanted to. The problem is not the crack. The problem is the addiction. And that's what Christianity is about. Christianity doesn't seek to remove those particular things from your life by saying you're not allowed to do them or else. In the same form and fashion that if I tried to remove crack from a crack addict, even if I told him he couldn't do it for a week, on the 8th day that individual would run right out by the first rock that he could find, and he would smoke it as fast as he could and go to whatever lengths he could to just gorge himself on it. He's not free because he kept him for a week. The fact of the matter is Christianity doesn't seek to free you from the addiction of doing those things. By telling you you can't do them, what it does is it seeks to remove the addiction itself at its core. Within each one of us is not just, an element of crack. It's the desire for the crack. If you could remove the addiction, you wouldn't have the problem anymore. I don't have a desire for crack. Never have. But there was a point in time when I had the desire to lie, cheat, steal, murder, all these things. I'm not an individual who is, or Christians in general are not individuals who are trying to adhere to some list of rules because we couldn't if we tried. What it is we're crack addicts in rehab. And those in the position of George Carlin who feel that they're free, the fact is they're not only slaves to their particular ideology and their baser desires, but they're blind to it, which not only makes you free, or not only makes you a slave to those desires, but it makes you blind as well. Christianity is not about removing a list of things that I'm allowed to do and in return I get heaven or I get God. It's about coming forward and saying I have an addiction. I have a desire to do those things. And I need a remedy for it. And that starts a rehab process whereby God begins to work in each one of our lives and begins to not remove those things from our life by threatening us, but he begins to remove those things from us by removing the desire to do those things. If you somehow want to vilify Christianity, then you're going to have to shut down every rehab center for alcoholics and drug addicts all over the world. But you wouldn't do that, which only shows the level of hypocrisy in your argument.